The session is being recorded now. Okay. So in the previous session, we had a brief introduction to what data visualization is, or, what is the purpose of data visualization, what exactly Power BI is, what are some of the features and benefits of Power BI, and also we had a look at the Power BI tools that we are going to learn, right? The Power Query, Power Pivot, and Power View. So from today's session, we'll begin with Power Query and then move on to Power Pivot, and then the last tool we are going to learn will be Power View. Okay. So I have a small presentation for the Power Query tool, and then we'll begin with working in Power BI. Okay. So let me just share my screen. Yeah. Okay. So in Power Query, we are going to focus on data normalization. So data normalization is nothing but data cleaning or data structuring or data harmonization. Basically, these are all synonyms, right? So they mean the same thing. So in data analytics or in data science, data normalization is the most the most commonly used terminology for data cleaning. Yeah. So but we know what data cleaning is, right? But what exactly, what are the techniques that are used for data cleaning? So let us learn a little bit about that. Okay. So data normalization or data cleaning is organizing the data or organization of data so that it appears similar across all records and fields. Right. So that is what is meant by data normalization. It is the organizing data to appear similar across records and fields. So through data normalization or through data cleaning, you can eliminate unstructured data and duplicates, right? So this is what you can achieve through data normalization. And data normalization enables your data to be more flexible, right? So by eliminating inconsistent dependencies. So if you have inconsistent dependencies, so it will cause a lot of problem going forward, right? So that is why the first step, right? The first step in data science or data analytics is to clean your data or is to normalize your data, right? So that you don't face problems in the, while doing your analysis or while, building your visualizations, right? So it makes your data more flexible by eliminating inconsistent dependencies. And the main objective of data normalization is to get higher quality data, right? So that is what you get after the data cleaning process or after the data transformation process. It results in getting higher quality data, and that is what all analysts or that is what all data scientists, at the end of the day, they want higher quality data, right? So majority of the times, right? So 70 to 80% of the time spent in data analysis or in data science is towards data cleaning, right? So once you have clean data or once you have that structured data or higher quality data, your analysis or your visualization or whatever it might be, right? So that becomes easy, right? So that doesn't consume much time. The part that consumes much time is data cleaning or data normalization. Okay, so this is basically an overview of what exactly data cleaning is or what exactly data normalization is. And this data normalization or this data cleaning in Power BI can be done in Power Query, right? So Power Query is the tool used to clean the data, okay, or to harmonize the data or to transform the data or to normalize the data. So basically, Power Query is a data connection, data transformation, and data preparation engine. We had already, gone through this in the previous session, but just a recap, right? So through Power Query, you can fetch data from various sources, including data of all sizes, right? It can be 1 MB file, it can be 1 GB file. It doesn't matter, right? You can connect to these data sources, right? From of all the sizes. And basically, using Power Query, you can reshape or transform data based on your requirements, right? So that is what we are going to learn, right? In today's session, we are going to learn what exactly can we do in Power Query, right? What are the data cleaning techniques that we can apply to the data? And lastly,
Satya,
yeah,
what is data connection?
data connection means you can connect to different data files from various sources. It can be an Excel file, it can be a CSV file, And data connection is nothing but you connect to different data sources, right? Or basically you import different data sources. Yeah. And so basically Power Query is a highly intuitive and interactive feature. So because Power BI is a code-free environment, it is built in such a way that new users can also learn it very quickly and on the go, right? So basically interactive means, you have a lot of options that you can basically explore, right? And these options are named so appropriately that you don't get confused, right? You don't get overwhelmed so by looking at the options, right? There are several options that you can use in Power Query, but they are so interactive and they are so intuitive that learning becomes easier, right? So that is the objective of Power BI, or basically any visualization platform out there in the market, right? So they want to make the job easier for the user, right? So this is basically an overview of what Power Query is. And in this slide, we are going to look at what exactly we can do in Power Query, right? I said that we are going to, apply some of the data cleaning techniques or data transformation techniques using Power Query. But what are those data cleaning techniques? But what are those data transformation techniques? It will be explained in this slide. Okay. So basically, these are called as functions, right? So basically, functionality of Power Query or capabilities of Power Query. First and foremost, you can change the data type, right? Basically you can change the data type from text to numeric, or from numeric to text, or from numeric to date time data type. There are several data types in Power Query. We'll go through this, right, one by one. And you can also perform some basic row and column operations. So basically you can filter out your rows, let's say top 100 rows, top 200 rows, or bottom 100 rows, bottom 200 rows. Or basically you can remove certain columns from the data, right? Let's say you don't want to work with a particular column, you can just remove it, right? You can just delete it. So that is what I mean by basic row and column operations. And next, you can filter, sort, and group your data as well. Okay. Then you can also basically deal with blank fields, right? So if there are blank fields, it means that there is no data, right? So blank means that there is no data. So what you can do, you can replace this blank field with a custom value of your own, or you can just delete that blank field. Okay, you can just delete the row with the blank field. So that is what I meant by dealing with the blank fields. Then you can append and merge data. So
If you
there is,
just delete this blank field, in what way? For example, all the particular column, field in the column should be blank, because some there may be some value, but only some blank.
hmm, hmm, hmm.
Some column with some values will be required. It will delete only those blank cells, or it will completely delete the column.
So yeah, no, it will not delete the column, but it will delete the row. So
Acha.
basic, yeah. So you cannot delete the entire column. So let's say you have one blank field in one column, and you
Mhm.
want to delete that particular blank field. It will not delete the entire column because that doesn't make sense. But instead, what it does, it deletes the row with the blank field.
But in that row, for example, we see some other columns would be having some data in that particular
Yeah,
row. We
I
may
mean you
not.
can, yeah, you can choose not to delete that. So if you want to get rid of the blank field, yes. If you don't have any use for that particular row, let's say a row of data has blank field and you decide to delete that row, then you can do that. But still, if you want the data to be present, so let's say, yeah, in a row, let's say you have 10 columns and you have 10 rows,
Hmm.
right? So you want to delete, let's say, the ninth row, which has one blank field in one particular column. Yes, you can do that. But if you want to retain the information present in the other column in the same row, you may choose to keep that row, right? So there is no harm in keeping blank fields, right? So it just means that there is no data, right? So I mean, we will learn both ways, right? You can replace that particular value with a custom value of your own, or you can just get rid of it. Okay, so that is what I meant by dealing with blank fields. I mean, it's based on your requirement, right? Then you can also append and merge data. So what do I mean by append and merge? So append and merge both means that to combine, right? To combine. But there's a difference between append and merge. So append means union, So union means you basically add row by row, right? It's a row by row operation, appending. Whereas merging is similar to join. Okay, join means you basically combine columns, right? You combine columns from one table with another table using a matching column or using a common column, right? So that is the difference between append and merge. Okay, so we'll go through all of these functions and much more, right? But these are basically the most frequently used or the most commonly used functions or features of Power Query. Okay, so you can change the data type, basic row and column operations, filter, sort, and group data. You can also deal with blank fields, and at the same time, you can also append and merge data. Okay, we'll go through all of these functions one by one and much more. Okay, so we'll start from today. Okay, so this is basically an overview of what we can do in Power Query. Okay, so I'm sure all of you have installed a Power BI desktop and also downloaded the data files. Okay, shared in the WhatsApp group. Uh, I have it stored here. Data sets. Yeah, it's here. Okay. So I have opened Power BI here. Okay. So this is the home page of Power BI. So before connecting to the data files or before connecting to the Excel and CSV files, I have a small settings change. Okay. So please make this change. Okay. So click on file. Okay. So everybody work along with me. Okay. So this is not a one-way street. Okay. Go to file and click on options and settings and then select the options. Okay, this is the first option here that says options. Okay, and then an options window appears here. Okay, and in the left section, in the left tab, select the data load under the current file section here. Okay, there are two sections here, global and current file. So under the current file, select the data load option. Okay, and then disable the type detection and relationships options here. Okay, disable these three options. Okay, which says detect column types and headers for unstructured sources, import relationships from data sources on first load, and auto detect new relations after data is loaded. So make sure to disable these three options, because if you have this option enabled, basically what it does, Power BI will automatically detect the data type of the columns and also the relationship or basically the cardinality of the data sources or basically the data. So let us learn how to manually do this first. Okay, so let us learn how to detect the data type and how to detect the relationships manually, and then I will show you how we can instruct Power BI to do it automatically. So basically you can just enable these options. Okay, but for now, please disable these three options so that we learn it manually. Okay, just a minute, guys. Okay, so make sure to disable these three options. Okay, so this is the first step. Then you can click on OK. Now we will access Power Query and then connect to different data sources. So this is the home page, right? So this is basically the home page of Power BI. Now we want to access Power Query or Power Query Editor to be more precise. So in the ribbons section, there is a subsection called as queries here, right? So in queries, there is an option called as transform data. Now, if you hover to the transform data, you can see that there is an explanation for the transform data option, right? So use the Power Query Editor to connect, prepare, and transform data. So click on transform data. When you click on transform data, a new window appears, right? That says Power Query Editor. And for the next 3 to 4 sessions, we'll be working in Power Query Editor. Okay, where we will learn everything about the Power Query tool. Okay, now this is the screen of Power Query Editor, and in here we can connect to different data sources. We can apply all the data cleaning techniques. Okay, so this is the first step basically.
If we click on that transform data, we get this screen, is it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So this is the Power Query Editor where you can connect to different data sources and also apply data transformation or data cleaning techniques. Now to connect to a new file. So right now we have not connected to any files here, right? So because queries here, so queries means tables. Okay, in Power BI, in Power BI, queries means tables or data sets. Okay. So now to connect to a new data source, right? So I have shared, I think, 4 data sets, but in that we are going to use 3 data sets for now. Okay. So it will be 2 CSV files and 1 Excel file. Okay. So you have to click on new source here. Okay. There is an option called as new source here. Okay. So click on new source. And when you click on the new source option, first you will get the most commonly used data sources, right? Excel workbook, SQL Server, analysis services, text CSV, web, OData feed, and blank query. Now, these are some of the most commonly used data sources. Now, if you want to view all the data sources, you can click on more. Okay. Now, for the time being, let us click on more. Now, here you get several options here, right? These are basically all the data sources that you can connect to, right? It can be a simple Excel workbook, or it can be, your Amazon Redshift or SAP HANA database or Azure SQL database, right? Virtually all the data sources in the world, right? You can connect to, your email, right? Microsoft Exchange is nothing but email, right? You can import data from that. You can import data from, your Amazon database or your, excuse me, basically all the databases, right? Right? You have several options here. Or what you can do, you can just click on the subsections here, right? If you want to connect to only files, you can just click on the files, which has the following options, right? Excel workbook, text or CSV, XML, JSON, and so on. If you want to connect to a particular database, you can just click on the database option and you'll get several options here, right? IBM DB2, Oracle, or SQL Server, or Access database, right? SAP HANA, Google BigQuery, and so on. But for the time being, we'll connect to files here, okay? Because the files I have shared is of CSV and Excel workbook file types, okay? Now, let us first connect to the CSV file type, okay? So make sure to select the file option and select the text/CSV option and click on connect. Now you'll get this window here where you get to choose the file which you want to import, right? So go to the file path where you have saved the files that I have shared in the WhatsApp group, and first select the population 2010-2019 dataset. Okay. And Power BI, you can't connect to, or you can't import 2 files at a time or 3 files at a time, or basically multiple files at a time. You have to select only 1 file at a time and then open it. Okay, so first we are going to connect to population 2010-2019, which is of the file type CSV. Okay, then click on open. Yeah.
Sir,
Yeah.
one doubt. So where we have clicked just now, I just missed it.
Okay, sure. I'll show you. Okay. So, are you in the Power Query editor window?
Yes. In the get data, I'm here. Where I have, which one I have to choose?
Click on new source. Okay, click on new source here.
Yes.
And then you can select text/CSV.
Okay.
So because 2 files are of CSV and 1 is of Excel workbook file type. Okay, so first we'll connect to CSV files and then we'll connect to the Excel file. Okay, so first connect to population 2010-2019. Click on open. Now you'll get a preview window here. Okay, so this is a preview window here. So how exactly?
Could you please guide once again?
Sure, no problem. So you have to go to new source. Okay, in the Power Query editor window, click on new source and then click on CSV file type. I mean, because our file type is CSV, I'm clicking on text/CSV option. Okay. Then basically it will provide you a file path window where you have saved the files, right? So you have to access that particular folder and then make sure to select the population 2010-2019. Okay, then
now one doubt I have here. See, when we were going through the theory part, we spoke that in Power BI we can connect multiple files or multiple databases.
Yeah.
Now, when you were selecting the file, you said that we cannot select multiple. So isn't it contradictory?
No. What I said was you can connect to different data sources, not at one. So basically, what you can do, you can first select this file here. Okay. So after importing this file, you can again go back to new source, select the file type, and then basically select this file. So that is what I meant by connecting to different data sources. So you can't select files here at once, but you can connect to different data sources in a single instance.
So basically, if we see, it's like you have to, each time you have to go to new source and select a file, is it?
Yeah, yes, absolutely right.
So like in, for example, when we use Outlook or something, we use we select multiple things and attach it. We cannot do something like that.
No, you can't do that here because what happens, you get a preview window here. Okay, in Power BI, every time you connect to a data source, you get a preview window so that you make sure that the data you are importing is is the right file, or if you want to make any changes, you can just do that in the preview window and then you can import the file. So that is the purpose that you can select only one file at a time to to import it to Power BI.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So select 2010-2019. Okay, and then click on open. Now you'll get a preview window here. Okay. So because this is a CSV file type, you get these options here, right? File origin, delimiter. So CSV is nothing but comma separated value file, right? So that is why the delimiter used here is comma. And right now you can see that this is the preview of the data here, right? So this is what the data looks like. I mean, this is just a preview window here, right? So that is why you're able to see only these many rows. And you have 9 columns of data here. Okay, 9 columns of data. Now let us not make any changes here. Okay, you can just simply go ahead and click on OK. Now that population 2010-2019 file has been imported. So that is why it is coming under the queries section here. Okay, similarly, let us import the other two files, right? 2010-2029 and 2030-2040. Okay, you can again go to new source and then click on text/CSV file and then select 2020-2029 this time. Okay, then click on OK. Sorry, click on open. And then you can click on OK here. Now the second file has also been imported here, right? We have connected to the second data set. Now let us connect to the last data set, that is population-2030-2040. Now this file is of the file type Excel.xlsx. Okay, so do not select the text/CSV option, but select the Excel workbook option. Okay, now you will get this option here because the population 2030-2040 is of the file type .xlsx, which means it's a workbook, Excel workbook. Okay, so select that and click on open. Now here you will get a different preview window. Here you get a navigator window here, right? So in Excel workbook, you have multiple sheets, right? You have multiple sheets, and that is what is Power BI is showing here. So basically query one is nothing but the sheet one name here. So in order for Power BI window, in order to enable the preview window here, you have to select the sheet here. Okay, so once you select the sheet, the preview window appears here. Okay, so because what happens in most of the times, you have multiple sheets and you have data stored in all of these multiple sheets in a single Excel workbook, right? So that is the purpose, or that is basically what Power BI is asking you to do. It is asking, or basically it is giving you a list of the sheets present in the Excel file, and it wants you to make the selection. Which sheet do you want to import? Since we have only one sheet here, you have to select that one sheet and click on OK. So now you can see the preview here, right? You have the 9 columns and the respective data set here. Okay, you can click on OK. Okay, the preview may be 50 days old. Let us not bother about that. Okay, so right now we have connected to the 3 data files, right? Population 2010-2019, 2020-2029, and basically this is the name of the sheet here, right? So the file was named population 2030-2040, but the sheet name, right? When you open the Excel file here, let me just show you. So basically the sheet name is named as query 1, right? So that is why you're getting the name of the query here as query 1. Nevertheless, we can rename it. Okay, but before we proceed with the data cleaning process, let me just explain a little bit about the data. Okay, so this is the data fetched from the United Nations. Okay, so this is the official data from the United Nations, where it has the population information or the population data for all the countries, right? For all the countries, for different years, different age groups, and different genders. Okay, so if you have a look at the data here, you have the location details, right? This means that location is nothing but the country details, right? So you have basically all the countries in the world here, from Afghanistan till I think Zimbabwe. Yeah, where is it? Yeah, Zimbabwe, right? So because why you are seeing multiple occurrences of each country is because it is for different year, different age group here, okay, and different genders. Right now, this is unstructured data, right? This is not a clean data, okay, because you can see that the first row, the first row is not shown correctly here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, whereas the second row is basically the column headers or the names of the columns, right? So this is an unclean data, and we'll make it structured. Okay, so just a little.
Now this is the data from the Excel file, right?
So these two, so the first two are from the CSV files, and the third is from the Excel file. Okay. Yeah, the only difference is the time period here. Okay, so all three files have the same columns, the 9 columns, but the difference is the time period. That's it. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So first, let us rename the third data set that we just imported. Okay, so query 1. So let us rename it as population dash 2030 dash 2040. Okay, because we'll know which time period we are working in, right? Now there are two ways to rename a file, or two ways to rename a query here. So the first option is to right click on the query you want to rename and select the rename option. And you can just rename it here, whatever you want. The second option, right? Close this. Yeah, the second option is to select the query you want to rename. And in the right section, in the right part of the screen, there is this properties and the name section here, right? You can also rename it here. Okay, so let us rename it. Okay, population dash 2030 dash 2040. Okay, and you can click anywhere in the screen. And right now it is renamed, right? So instead of query 1, we have renamed it to population dash 2030 dash 2040. Okay, so that it makes our job easier. We will know which time period we are working in. Okay, now let us come back to the first query here. Okay, population 2010 dash 2019, and you can see that the first row of data is useless, right? It says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So basically it has numbered the columns here. Whereas we want the second row of data, right? The second row of data to be the column headers, right? Location ID, location, time, age group start, age group span, population male, population female, and population total. Oh, just a little bit about the population data here. You can see that they are in decimal numbers, right? Population male 2715.07, population female 2600.535. Now don't get confused why the population data is in decimals, because population is discrete data, right? Discrete data is nothing but the data which you count. Okay, basically the number of people or the number of students, like that. But why is it in decimal? Because the United Nations, the format they follow is they always divide the population by 1000. Okay, so basically if you want to get the actual number for this particular male population for this particular age group and particular year and particular country, so let's say Afghanistan in the year 2010, and in the age group 0 to 4, the male population was this much. It means if you want to get the real number, you have to multiply this particular number 2715.07 by 1000. Okay, then you will get the real number. Okay, but the format that United Nations follow is they always divide the population number by 1000. Okay, because if you have,
I am unable to understand, sir.
Okay, so you can
no, any I think not only you, and I think even anywhere this kind of a census has happened, it is divided by 1000 for a population especially.
Exactly, right? Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, yes, you pointed out it very correctly. So basically the census data, as he suggested, they always divide the number by 1000, because if you have basically you have population data in millions and billions, right? So it will be very hard to read it, right? Million has 6 zeros and billion has 9 zeros. So it becomes harder and harder to basically, you know, count the number of zeros and then determine whether it's in millions or whether it's in billions. So what they do is basically, so this is the format that United Nations follow, right? So what they do is they divide the number by 1000. Okay, so that is why you're seeing the decimal point here. If you want to basically see the actual number, you just multiply this by 1000. So basically 2715.07, when you multiply it, the decimal places go away, right? So basically you will get, excuse me, if you multiply by this 1000, you'll get the actual number, right? If you multiply this number here, right, 92.622 into 1000, what you will get? You will get 9262.22, right? 9262, sorry, 92622. Okay, because you will be taking away the 3 decimal places, right, into 1000. So 1000 has 3 zeros. So basically those 3 zeros will basically take care of these 3 decimal places, right? So that is what I meant by multiply by 1000. Okay, so okay, I'll give you an even more simple explanation here. You can see that there is 3.543, right? So that is the population data for the male gender. Okay, for the male gender, for the age group 0 to 4 in the year 2010. In, so which country is this? 7, in Antigua and Barbuda, right? Now 3.543 doesn't make sense, right? How can a population data be in decimals? So there can't be 3.543 males for a particular country, for a particular time, and for a particular age group, right? 3.543 doesn't make any sense. If you want to get the actual number, you multiply this particular number by 1000. So 3.543 multiplied by 1000 is 3543. So that is the actual male population data in Antigua and Barbuda in 2010 for the age group 0 to 4. Okay, so that is how you make sense of the data. Okay, so as one student suggested, this is how they typically collect the census data, right? So they collect the data and then they divide it by 1000 so that it becomes easier to read. Okay, it becomes easier to read. Otherwise, you will have these numbers in millions and billions. It becomes easier to it becomes difficult to read. And also, while performing the analysis, if you have huge numbers, it will take a lot of time to perform the calculations, to perform the analysis, right? So these are the two reasons why the census data is collected in such a way where they divide the number by 1000. Okay, and this is what is happening here also. Okay, so the population male, population female, and population total, all of them are divided by 1000. If you want to get the actual number, you just have to multiply these numbers by 1000. Okay, now let us come back to the data cleaning process. Okay, now the first data cleaning technique we are going to do is row operations. Okay, basic row operations. Now in the ribbon section here, there is this section called as reduce rows. Okay, in reduce rows, you can either keep certain rows from the top or keep certain rows from the bottom or keep a range of rows, or you can remove certain rows from the top, certain rows from the bottom, and certain rows alternating. Okay, remove alternate rows. Okay, we'll have a look at all of these options one by one. Okay, now here you can see that the first row of data here is useless, right? 1 2 3 4 5, it is not of any use. So let us remove that first row. Okay, let us remove the first row of data from this 2010-2019 data. Okay, so you click on remove rows option and you select the remove top rows option. Okay, and here you have to specify how many rows you want to remove from the top. And our requirement is that we want to remove only the first row of data. So you specify the number of rows as 1 and you click on OK. And the first row of information has been removed. And a beautiful feature of Power BI is that it records all the steps that you have applied. Okay, so you can see in the right part of the screen, you can see that there is a section called as applied steps. And here, whatever steps that you have taken or whatever steps that you have applied in Power Query Editor, all of them will be recorded here. Or basically, this is a documentation of the steps that you have taken in Power Query Editor. So this has a very beautiful purpose here, right? You can make sure that you have applied the correct step. or you have applied the correct function, or you have applied the correct feature. If you have applied a particular step, or if you have applied a certain option incorrectly, you can just click on the red cross mark here, right? So if I click on this, basically I'm basically undoing the step that I have taken. This is basically the Control Z in other application, right? Control Z is nothing but the undo option, right? So that is what is being done here. Okay, if you click on the red cross mark, basically that step will be removed and you'll go back to the previous step. So the previous step, we can still see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the column numbers are coming here, right? So let us just do that again. Okay, so you can go to remove rows, remove top rows, and select number of rows as 1 and click on OK. Now you can see that the removed top rows step is being recorded here. Okay, now we have eliminated the first row. Okay, we have eliminated the first row. Now the next step is to somehow shift this first row here, right? So the first row of information is right now nothing but the column headers here. Okay, so loc id should be the column header, location should be the column header, but right now the column headers is column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, and so on. Now how to do that? How can we shift the first row of data, right? How can we basically move this to be the column headers or names of the columns? Now in the transform ribbon here, in the transform ribbon, there is an option called as use first row as headers. So basically what it does, it promotes the first row of this particular table into the column headers. Okay, we can just click on it now. Okay, if you click on the first row as headers option, you can see that now the column headers have changed, right? Instead of column 1, column 2, column 3, right now we can see that loc id, location, time, age group start, age group span, population male, population female, population total, right? They are all the column headers now. Okay, so this is how you can promote the first row in your table to be the column headers. Okay, now there is also this option called as remove top rows, remove bottom rows, and remove alternate rows. Now we have already looked at remove top rows. Now because we wanted to remove the first row, we just specified the number of rows as 1. Now let's say you want to remove the first or basically the top 10 rows. Now you specify number of rows as 10. Now here Afghanistan till Austria is basically 1 to 10 here, right? So when we click on OK, the first row of data will be Azerbaijan. Okay, now let us have a look at it. When you click on OK, excuse me, Afghanistan till Austria, right? So those rows were removed. And now we can see that the first row of data is for, or is basically from the country Azerbaijan, and then the rest of the list follows. Okay, now let us remove this. Now, similarly, you have an option called as remove bottom rows here. Okay, this is basically the inverse of remove top rows. Okay, here we remove the rows from the top, and the remove bottom rows basically removes the rows from the bottom. Okay, where you have to specify the number of rows. So basically, if you do not want to work with, let's say, the bottom 10 rows, bottom 25 rows, you can just specify that number, and Power BI will basically eliminate those rows. Okay, now here I think we have more than 1000 rows here. Okay, so that's why it'll take a lot of time to scroll down to the bottom. But basically, remove top rows and remove bottom rows work on the same line. Okay, work on the similar lines. Now there is an option called as remove alternate rows here. Okay, so when you click on it, basically you get 3 options here. First, you need to select the first row to remove. Okay, so let's say you want to remove the first row. Okay, you want to remove the first row. You specify the first row to remove is as 1. Now the second option is number of rows to remove. So what it means, starting from the first row to remove, how many rows do you want to remove? Now let's say starting from the first row, I want to remove 2 rows. So I specify the number of rows to remove as 2. Then the third option is number of rows to keep. After removing the rows, how many rows do you want to keep? Let's say we want to retain 1 row. Now what it does, it will remove the first 2 rows. Okay, it will remove Afghanistan, Albania. Why? Because the first row to remove, we have given it as 1. So basically it will remove the first row. Okay, now starting from the first row, how many rows did we want to remove? 2 rows. So starting from the first row, so it counts the first row as well. Okay, so remember, it counts the first row. So I've given the number of rows to remove as 2. So what it does, it removes the first row and the second row. Then it comes to the third option here. The third option says number of rows to keep. So we are keeping one row here. So it retains Algeria. Then these three steps repeat. So what it does, it removes Afghanistan, Albania. It retains Algeria. Then it removes Angola, Antigua and Barbuda, retains Argentina. Then it removes Armenia, Aruba, it retains also Australia. Okay, let us have a look at it. So now when I click on OK, Afghanistan, Albania should be removed, Algeria is retained. Angola, Antigua and Barbuda should be removed, Argentina should be retained. Armenia, Aruba should be removed, Australia should be retained. Now let us have a look at it. It is happening here, right? Algeria, Argentina, Australia, and basically the pattern follows, right? The pattern is repeating here. Okay, so that is what is remove alternate rows, what it does. Okay, so basically if you just hover to this option here, you indicate the number of rows to repeatedly take and skip starting at a specific row. Okay, now you need not start at first row here. Okay, you need not start at first row. You decide from which row you want to basically remove the rows. Okay, we can just click on the undo option. But anyway, we'll.
So now I'm leaving for the day.
Please, yes, you can carry on. Yeah, you can carry on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll start the session from tomorrow onwards, from 7:15. Okay, all right. So basically, these are the options where you can remove rows either from the top or either from the bottom, or basically you can remove alternate rows. Okay, now don't worry about these three options. We'll come back to it later. Okay, now similarly, you can also keep certain rows, right? So basically, if you want to keep certain rows, let's say I only want to keep 100 rows of data from the top. So you can select the keep top rows here, and you can specify the number of rows as 100. Now, if you do this, when you click on OK, when you scroll here, only 100 rows of data are available here. Okay, so this is basically sampling techniques, right? These are basically sampling techniques where you can retain certain rows from the top, or where you can remove certain rows from the top, or similarly, you can retain rows from the bottom or remove rows from the bottom. Okay, you can undo this step here. And similarly, you can also keep bottom rows where you have to specify that n part, right? Keep bottom n rows. Okay, so if you specify that number of rows as 100, you will only retain the bottom 100 rows. Okay, bottom 100 rows. And there's a third option called as keep range of rows. Okay, so when you click on this option, you get to decide from the range of rows you want to retain. Okay, so here you determine the first row of first row of data you want to retain. Let's say starting from the first row, I want to work with only 10 rows of data. Okay, I want to work with only 10 rows of data. So basically, when you specify the number of rows as 10 and the first row as 1, when you click on OK, you will get basically the first 10 rows. Similarly, if I want to work with the row starting with 5, okay, starting with 5, and then the next 5 rows, okay, then the next 5 rows, the starting row will be Antigua and Barbuda, and the data will be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 till Australia. Okay, so this is basically how you can retain range of rows. Now that option is not provided in the remove rows. Okay, so this is basically a complaint of many users in Power BI. Okay, because most of the times you will be asked to remove a range of rows, right? Here that option is not available, whereas it is available in retaining the rows. Now a question might arise. Now, how can we remove a range of rows? Here we can only remove rows from the top, rows from the bottom, or remove alternate rows. But how can we remove a range of rows? Now there is a workaround for it. Okay, there is a workaround for it. Okay, so let me just undo this option. So the workaround is you have to first create a column, right? Create a column that assigns a unique serial number or a unique ID for all the rows. Okay, then using the filter option, you can select which rows you want to work with. Okay, now this option will not be feasible if you have, let's say, huge data, right? If you have huge data, you have to manually select the rows which you want to apply, right? Or which you want to remove. So this option is a workaround, but it has limitation. Okay. Now the limitation is that you can't, automatically select the range of rows where you can, insert, where you can specify the first row to, first row to retain and the number of rows to basically retain from starting from the first row. Okay. So that is the limitation of, basically, creating a column and then using the filter option. Okay. We will explore that in the coming classes. Okay. Now, these are some of the basic row operations where you can remove certain rows from the top, from the bottom, or from alternate rows, or you can keep certain rows from the top, from the bottom, or even a range of rows. Okay. Now, there is another option called as reverse rows. Okay. So basically now we are seeing Afghanistan as the first country. Now, if you want to invert the table, if you want to view the bottom row as the first row, what you can do, you can go to transform, right? You can go to transform and select the option reverse rows. So what it does, it inverts the table's rows such that the last rows are displayed first. Okay, so when you click on the option here, you can see that the last row is being displayed first here. Okay, so this is what you can do using the reverse rows option. So you can basically invert the table. Okay, you can flip the table so that the last rows are displayed first. Okay, so this is the reverse rows option. And similarly, right now, if you see the bottom left corner here, you can see that there are 9 columns and there are 999 plus rows, means there are more than 999 rows. But we don't know how many rows of data are there, right? You can't manually keep on scrolling here, right? It will take a lot of time. Instead, what you can do to determine the number of rows present in your query, what you can do, you can simply click on the count rows option here. So basically it returns the number of rows in this particular table. So right now we are working in 2010-2019 table. So select that particular table and click on the count rows option. Now Power BI will quickly calculate the number of rows present in the data. Right now in this particular data, or in this particular query 2010-2019, we have 41,795 rows. Okay. Similarly, you can do it for all the other tables also. Okay. Now we can just undo this step here. We'll go back to the data set. Okay. So that is the reason why it is showing 999 plus rows, meaning we have so much data that Power BI doesn't provide the particular number here. Okay. We have 9 columns of data. It is giving that particular number here. Okay. You can count that, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Okay. But whereas it is not showing the exact number of rows here because it is more than 1,000. Okay, whenever there are more than 1,000 rows of data in in the file that you are using, Power BI will give you this option here. Okay, 999 plus rows. If you want to determine the exact number of rows, you can go to transform and select the count rows option. Okay. Now these are some of the basic row operations. Okay, basic row operations. Now, excuse me guys, just give me a minute. Yeah, these are the basic row operations. Similarly, let us have a look at the basic column operations. Okay, you have to go back to the home page, and in the manage columns section here, you have 2 options: choose columns and remove columns. This is similar to keep rows and remove rows. Okay, now in remove rows, there are 2 options here: remove columns and remove other columns. Now, before you proceed with remove columns options, you have to manually select which columns you want to remove and which columns you want to retain. Now, in our case, we are not going to retain age group start and age group span. Okay, we do not want these columns. Okay, excuse me, we are going to work only with the location ID, location, time, age group, population male and population female columns. We are not going to work with population total, age group and age group span. Sorry, age group start and age group span. Okay, now how to remove these three columns? There are multiple ways. Okay, so that is the beauty of Power BI. There is no one way. There are multiple ways to arrive at the same solution. Okay, now the first way is to select the columns. Okay, select the columns which you want to remove. So holding control on the keyboard, select the multiple columns. Okay, so select age group start, age group span, and population total. So select these three columns. Okay, age group start, age group span, population total. Now the first way to remove these columns is to go to remove columns and select the first option that says remove columns. So what it does, it removes the currently selected columns from this table. So when you click on the remove columns option, the three columns that were selected, age group start, age group span, and population total, they have been removed. Okay, they have been removed. Now the second way, okay, let me just undo this step here, okay, so that I can show you the second step or the second option. Now the second option is, it is all select the columns which you want to remove, that is age group start, age group span, population total. Right click on any of the selected columns. Okay, now we have selected three columns here, right? Right click on any of the three columns and select the remove columns option. You will arrive at the same solution here, okay, where we have removed the three columns. Okay, now this is the second way of removing the columns. Right now we have removed three columns. Okay, I'll go back to the original structure here where we have the three columns visible here. Okay, now the third way of removing particular columns is by using the remove other columns here. So what remove other columns does is it removes all the columns from this table except the currently selected ones. So here, instead of selecting the columns which you want to remove, you are basically selecting the columns which you want to retain. Okay, so here what we will do, now I know this step is a little bit time consuming here because we have our objective is to remove the three columns, right? If you remove three columns from 9 columns, you will be left with 6 columns. Now the third option here is to select that 6 columns which you want to retain and select the option that says remove other columns. So what it does, it retains the selected columns and removes the unselected columns. Okay, now let us have a look at it once. So you basically select the columns which you want to retain. We want to retain the 6 columns, that is location ID, location, time, age group, population male, and population female. Now, if you select the second option, sorry, the third option that says remove other columns, it basically retains the columns that were selected, right? Retains the columns that were selected and removes the columns that were not selected. Okay, so this is the removed other columns option here. Okay, now let us retain this structure here. Okay, let us retain the structure. Now you can choose whichever option you want, right? Our objective is to remove age group start, age group span, and population total. Our objective is to remove these three columns. Now you can choose whichever option you are comfortable with. Okay, you can either select the columns which you want to remove, go to remove columns and select the first option, or the second option, you can select the columns which you want to remove, click on any of the three columns, right click on any of the three column headers and select the remove column option. Or the third way is to select the columns which you want to retain. We want to retain these 6 columns here. Okay, location ID, location, time, age group, population male, and population female. Select those 6 columns, go to remove columns and select the remove other columns option. Okay, now we have removed the 3 columns. Okay, right now it is saying 6 columns here. Okay, 6 columns. Now let us stop for today. Okay, let us stop for today. Tomorrow we will explore the other data cleaning techniques, such as filtering data or analyzing the columns, appending tables, replacing values, right, and changing the data types. Okay, we will explore all of these options in tomorrow's session. Okay, just a reminder,